Back again with another installment of the Crawler Canyon Competitor Spotlight Series. Today's episode, Jolly Green, the TRX-4. And let's get this out of the way right off the bat. This rig weighs 9 pounds. I think that's important. It was born as a TRX-4 Defender with all the little bits, and over its life has spent time gaining weight and gathering parts primarily to offset the bulk of that Defender body, which was really the entire reason I got into rock crawling. This was the crawler that got me into this. I've been messing with RC cars since the 80s, and this was the first crawler. And I loved that body until I didn't. I loved it so much I painted a second one. If you've seen any of the other videos when Jolly Green was still the original Jolly Green, it had that green Defender shell, which is not inexpensive to put together. And I eventually just got to a point where there's an amount of aesthetic we're willing to compromise for performance and vice versa. And there was nothing I could do to this vehicle any further to offset that 2+ pound body weight. So we arrived where we are now with a J Concepts K10 body on it. And we'll take a little look at what's inside. It's a TRX-4, so it's busy in there. It's running the Axe 550 3300 kV, or as I like to call it, too much. Because that is precisely what it is, particularly in a rig with a 2-speed gearbox. Like I said, this is what got me into crawling, so some of these parts were assembled from a position of just not knowing any better. Now, on the other hand, you take all that added weight to offset that shell, and you're going to get a high verticality score because it's going to want to stay rubber side down. Turning this thing is an AGFRC A86 BUMW, which is, I think, the biggest AGFRC. 639 ounces at 12 volts, runs directly off the servo. It is also too much. I think at 16.8 at 4S, I think it has 900 and some ounces. It's an absurd amount of servo. But what it does is give Jolly Green the ability to hold whatever line it wants. Those poly pipes are absolutely slick. They will not hold a vehicle. If you touch a tire onto those, you're going to roll off. So I generally try to give them a wide berth, but with the holding power that servo has and the grip this truck has from the weight and the tires, its stableness-itude is a 10 for sure. For how heavy this thing is, the weight is really low. Yeah, racing 90mm, doing the shock work. This was the set I had bought for Zoidberg the Capra initially, threw them on there, and just because they were shorter than the Capra shocks, I didn't like them. There was something about them. I believe the rears hit the cage at some point, so I was like, I don't want to have wasted the money. I'll throw them on Jolly Green, and wow. It's strange how these things work out sometimes. I love the TRX-4 shocks on other rigs. I should get back. Bumpability, how could it not be good? The truck weighs 9 pounds. The ESC motor combo make way too much power. So you take those Scorpios, little bit of wider offset, all that power, all that weight. It's like a rocket. It just shoots towards where you want it to go. But at the same time, the low speed control is remarkably good. So Jolly Green can get into places with those desert lizards keeping the wheels down that would ordinarily really be an issue. When Little Yellow the Ecto was stock, it couldn't make that climb up against the fence in Dry Bone Valley. And Jolly Green does it at, well, it's a good 3.5 pounds heavier now after having shed 2 pounds of body weight. So like this situation here was one he could not have held with the Defender shell. That high tippy weight would have just pulled him over. So as much as I miss the aesthetic of the Defender, something had to give. Underneath, we just get into a mess. The wheelbase had to be shortened to take it down from the Defender to a 12.3, so it's got brass, partially brass lower links. It's got MIP drive shafts, which had to be tinkered with. Like, nothing under there is what I would say permanent. The drive shafts have come apart a couple times. I don't like how MIP is still just using little grub screws to hold stuff together. Here we have a little bit of a montage of me attempting to throw some donuts, which this truck doesn't really like to do. The best I managed to get was lock the front diff, leave the rear open, throw it into high gear, and you get this kind of swirling pogo insanity. So I gave him a 7 because, yeah, that's a pretty good redneck donut, but it's bouncing all over the place, and it took me quite a few tries. By the same token, you can do this. I mean, you lock those diffs, you put it in a high speed, and you just bury the throttle, and the thing launches. So you can go from doing dumb to doing legit crawling with the flick of a switch and the turn of a knob in my case. So as all-arounders go, I tip my hat to Jolly Green. I think it really has that X factor of a crawler that can bash. Yeah, we'll call it a crawler that can bash. It's definitely not a basher that can crawl because it's not super good at the bashing. Now, then sometimes you just want to hoon it out. You got a roostability. It's 10, that might be 11. Can't even count the bars. Because you get on some nice soft soil, you open both of those diffs up, and you just stuff the throttle, and you make a big mess, and then that dust will clog up your HVAC filters in your house. That kind of sums up Jolly Green. It's quite a competent crawler, and it's equally competent at just being dumb. So it's a basher crawler. Like, I don't know what the future holds in store. I know I want to put new links on there. Those rear links are definitely a hack bodge because I didn't have anything that was the correct length to get it to 12.3. There's some large rocks stuck in the hubs right there. Cleaned them out so we can go back and knock around on the rock for another minute or two. I had a really good time making this one because sometimes I forget. I mean, versatility is a great thing, and I would say is the strength of TRX-4s. Particularly, well, both of my TRX-4s have, well, all the TRX-4s here have 2 speeds in them, and they're just fun. Jolly Green is a lot of fun, and I hope you had fun. I know I had fun, and I'll absolutely see you in the next one.